my mic is on. Now we should be all good. Cool. Challenges, feedback, and production. Ah, no, this is the one. Feedback and production. Yes. Nice. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this feedback stream. Emerald, how are you doing? Should be live over on Twitch as well. There we are. So we're all set up. Perfect. So we're gonna do some feedback today. Just maybe 2 hours, depends on how many people we got. And then I'm gonna do some production. Live is exhausting. I understand, bro. Still a little bit recovering from what you guys maybe know from last week. It wasn't really allergies at the end of the day. It was the fact that I had a cold because likely, I think, we went and did the media servers in the sun, and then we came back into the office where it was colder and the air conditioning was on. And that usually leads to getting a cold. So I still have a little bit of it. You might hear my voice being a little bit different still than it usually is, but it is much less than it was before. Dutch genetics, yes, exactly. The person who put the first one in there already here. Fosobi, how are you doing? Welcome. I don't think Fulado is here yet. Would be cool to have him in here. Maybe I'll wait for a little bit longer before we start with the actual feedback. Just a couple of seconds. Of course, we don't have any challenge or something like that to warm us up. It usually goes up quite rapidly. It's kind of... So normally I would have something to talk about here. But today I literally spent the whole day working on the visuals for my upcoming album. And I cannot show any of it. Because I want to keep it a secret up until the actual album comes out. Right? So honestly, nothing about today is something that I can talk about in terms of what I have done. It is going, it's still very on in the early phase, but I think the idea that I have is going to work well. Psy in the Netherlands is dying. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna ask how so, but I guess the main thing that gives it away is the Sci-Fi Festival, because that's the biggest one. It's hard to tell if it ever comes back to the Netherlands. It is... I mean, if it ever comes back at all, even now in Germany, they did not get permission to do their festival. It might be that for the next few years, we're gonna see people clamping down more and more on the legal parties, and that people start to go more towards illegal parties again. Because it's not like people are going to stop having fun, right? That people are going to stop partying. They're just going to go to a different spot to do their partying and something that is less regulated. You know how it is here, always filing permits, etc. now when the government organs see the word Psy, they don't even hesitate anymore. It's just a straight no. I mean, that's not a problem that is local to the Netherlands. Maybe it's Europe, maybe it's further in the world, I don't know, maybe the United States or other places outside of Europe also deal with this issue, but I definitely know that in Italy the same thing is happening. And I think in Italy they're even stronger on the illegal raves as well as they are in the Netherlands. I don't know if it's just a Netherlands thing. I think it will be a more European thing. Italy too, but in the Netherlands every square centimeter is designed or designated. I guess so. But in Italy, you get more of a punishment if they do catch you. You get 6 years in prison if you're an organizer of a rave. I don't think in the Netherlands you get 6 years. I'm sorry a little bit, I can't find feedback on Discord. Check out the feedback rules channel. You'll find that under the stream category. It should for you be the last channel, and then if you check the channel and read what is in there and apply that, then you should be able to get the feedback on stream channel as well. And that is where you actually submit. 6 years is insane. Yes. That is stupid. But just goes to show that every country is currently or seems to be cracking down on illegal stuff and raves and just people having fun and whatnot. You have to have fun in the right way. You have to fall in line of what they want you to do in order to have fun. You don't have to the freedom to listen to maybe the music that you want or whatever it is that you want to do. I hope you can find it, Fossoby. I think I'm gonna get started with the feedback, and then throughout the course of the stream, hopefully more people will join and submit tracks and whatnot. It has been a little bit still just because my channel is slowing down as I now have a job and therefore fewer people watch the actual streams. But hopefully it's still enough that I can keep a steady flow of feedback going. My friends did a big illegal techno this weekend in Luxembourg. They came with the military police to shut it down last night until this morning. That's crazy. Military police should not have to be called for a party. We're gonna start off with Fulado. Tried some industrial techno for the first time and it was pretty fun, but I don't know, I'm not really happy with the bass mix in the second drop. Any advice? We'll see.
Spedizioni veloci, intrattenimento senza fine. Su Prime solo 4,99 € al mese.
I hate the ads in the embed. That sucks. Nice start, but having a kick in there that fills in the sidechain part would be nice. Can turn it up a bit. Feels a little bit rumbly, not just in the traditional techno sense, but it seems like you want to go for a stable bass but also have a bit of a rumble in there. I don't think whatever you're doing in bass lines, it is mixing. Maybe it's the kick being too long, maybe something like that, but the bass should probably have its own space. And then the mid-range should be a little less cool here. Don't think I can see any real issues in terms of bleeding. That is something you have to find out yourself. I think it's these sidechain saw chords that are a little bit too loud for me. That is like covering up everything in terms of really being able to hear the idea and being able to hear the main synth melody and the vocals and whatnot. As well. Vocals definitely should have more space in this part. I like the melodic part. I think the brutal sidechain and everything is a little bit much. Yeah, in the breaks I don't see where it would be necessary, but I guess it's there to slightly keep the rhythm. If you want to do that kind of strong sidechaining, it should probably be against an actual there. Maybe like a clap or a drum loop or something like that. It can be nice to have moments where there's no sidechaining, just as emphasis to get it out there. I don't think when it's like just playing in the drop and it is playing here, the amount of sidechaining and the overall amount of volume reduction that it's doing is too extreme. But it can be overwhelming when it's not playing with a kick on top. Cool stuff. Overall, very, very nice stuff. I like it. Hey, where do I drop tracks for review? In my Discord server, there is a channel called Feedback Rules, where you'll find all of the information you need to submit and all of the rules that you need to abide by. Getting there is as easy as !feedback. Could be reduced in intensity for the higher pitched elements when the kick is not present. Oh yeah, I was thinking more of it as like a global thing on all of the elements. Because it felt like the sidechaining was pretty much the same for everything. Like in a break, it's also for the backing sounds, it doesn't have to stay sidechain, so to say. It can be a cool way to keep the energy in some of the elements and not others. That's also a good idea. I have a small problem when I produce. I feel like bass and kick space and the synths and things don't have a lot of space and mostly go high. This is such a specific thing that it's hard to say giving too much space to the kick and bass or too little to the synths, or if it's maybe your listening environment, or if it's the amount of synths that you put in there altogether. So that maybe you have like 10 synths in there and you feel like all of them need a certain amount of space, and that is not doable, versus having 2 in there and they need a certain amount of space. That is going to be a major difference, of course. It's just the amount of other stuff that you want to have occupied in that space. It's really hard for me to judge on that without hearing an actual track of yours. So if you want to submit for the feedback, now is the time to actually do that. It says submit to the channel I don't have access to. Yes, you have to read the whole message. It will say exactly in this message how you get access to it. It is written in such a way that if you read the whole message, that you will know exactly how you get in there. But it's written in such a way that you read the stuff that I actually want you to read first before it tells you the access. Okay, next up we have Ningxi, who is here in the chat. Very nice. On the darker side, baseline not yet exported. Distant world 153 D sharp. Usually when it's these very specific BPMs, you know that you're in for a crazy ride. That means that he thought about the actual BPM that this track needs to have. Not just a classic 150, no, it's 153. Bass sounds nice. Honestly, it doesn't look like you need to export. It looks like it's just coming back here to the silence line at the end, which is exactly the kind of thing that you would want. A little bit of an issue with syncing here on some of these elements. Make sure that they are synced up with that 1/6 up with the kick and the bass and the top hats in this case most of the part. Slowly increasing the intensity of the elements, really nice. Maybe slowly having a sequence starting to play on this part. Little parts where it's out of sync. Sounding very nice, I like it. Nice increase in energy here. Nice, interesting, alternating synth. You have certain frequencies your kick and bass don't go above. Usually I low pass filter my kick at like 10k and my bass at maybe like 9k. But sometimes I don't even do it. Dancing likes projector stick. Yeah, if there wasn't that picture you would also see me dance, by the way. It's a danceable track for sure. I was about to say, this is really the moment where we need to hear a big change happen. Fun fact, I used cow samples in that track. I haven't been able to I don't know. At least I haven't heard it since you said it. Maybe later I'll find it out. Or is it used for the very slow atmosphere? So interesting to see how MP3 has this deep cut in the highs. It's at 16k, it's because of the compression. It doesn't save any frequency up there. I think it's a cool style sound design wise. It's overall chaotic, but the next level is to keep the chaos throughout almost all of the track, but have a point where it relies on a stable rhythm for a second. And I cannot see the times here, but I believe it's exactly halfway through the song, a few seconds, and then we go into a drop where it's very minimal with the drums and that kind of stuff. Maybe from there, building up a segment of like 32 bars or maybe 64 bars, where it relies on a stable rhythm and then has this kind of chaos playing around it, is a good way to have just a moment in the track where it's a little bit more unique. Because the problem with the sound design, chaos and randomness the whole time is that there's not really any main idea in there. We don't need stable grids. I do like them from time to time. Not as just stable grids in that part, but just some stability and developing around it in a kind of way. Does it stutter for anyone else? The whole stream or just the track? Also stuttering here. Okay. That's an issue. My preview seems to be holding up tremendously. I don't know what that's about. Either way, very good. Very good. In this current state, the bassline doesn't even need to be exported. So if you want to continue working in this state, that is at least entirely for the part where we check the kick and bass. Finding those setups where kick and bass does not need to be exported is always nice, but you have to know how to check for it, right? And that is simply, well, I say simply, but let's quickly set up a. I do have like bass samples, I believe, right? Bass hits, yeah. Is there no normal bass sample in here? No normal 16 note. This is in C, so 3 to get into D sharp for this example. If your bass note looks like this, where before the next note plays, it goes to silence, then you're good. If it looks like where the wave kind of continues into the bass line and it looks like the start of the next one is mumbled up in comparison to the first one, then it's bad. That's everything you need to know. Thanks, Protector, for the feedback. As always, I missed my track on stream, sadly. You're on YouTube, but you should be able to scroll back and find it in the beginning of the stream. Oh, I'm coughing like crazy here. Me too, I assume it was my spawn slurping up all of the Wi-Fi. My track is going to be lower in volume as always. Okay. I do see now that we have a member in here who should technically go first. So we're going to jump that. I should have done them at the beginning of the stream. That is my fault. But that means that I am going to give them priority because that is what they pay for. I wanted to thank you very much for the feedback on my track during the last stream. I think I managed to improve it quite a bit and would really be stoked to hear your opinion on it now. No problem at all, man. Cool. Thanks. Stamp Tech, the Luminous Observer. fairly wide start. Also quite loud since I am not boosting the volume in any way myself. And quite harsh here and quite loud. This was the track I think I remember. It sounds like it should start in a Psybin. Like that slow kind of rhythm. Quite a lot happening at the start here. Quite a lot of elements up until this point. It's all morphing into each other in a way that isn't really clear to follow. There's always like two ideas playing at the same time. I think. Here we had those 16-note things and then those bells. Very, very loud atmospheres here. Overall, this track feels like it has a bit of a nasty loudness. You know what I mean? It's hard to describe. I think the main thing is that the leads and sequences are a bit too loud. Overall, maybe the track is a little bit on the wide side. Like if the leads aren't playing now here, it sometimes feels like it gets very wide. Or where the kick and bass isn't playing, it feels like it gets very wide. Overall, also not the best drum samples here. I mean, it's a cool idea for a snare, but I don't think it's really working. Basses are very loud here. The other thing is, as I said, it feels like there's a few too many ideas going on at any point in time. It's really hard to hear exactly which sound you want us listening to. Like here you have a cool melody playing now, but that is not even coming out of the rest of the sound. It's also completely mono, that kind of main sounding melody. That sounds like the most interesting part of this part of the track here. I would even maybe write my bass line around that. So this is a key part of the track. You know what I mean? Like a second drop or something like that. And it goes into another break, and then in the third drop again it doesn't use this element whatsoever. Yeah, from this moment where it goes in the break, it should not follow that melody anymore, because that's the point where it becomes boring and overused. Bit of a rough transition there. We have this cool rhythm happening now that wasn't playing before, and there's constant elements on here that are covering everything up. honestly, much more of the same feedback, much more of the same advice, just focusing more on the mixing and the amount of elements that you're playing. Don't go too crazy with it. Your listener has to be able to conceive a singular flow through the track, the energy level of the track, so to say. Of course, the track can do multiple things at once, but usually it all builds up to a single energy flow and a single idea that is main and key, the main element of the track. Sound design is really cool though. This patch is really nice. Overall, some cool track. Some cool stuff. And a very nice track. Next up, we have Test Track by Inner Sight. Work in progress. Don't really know where this track is going. We'll see if we can help you with that. Few mixing issues, but good stuff. Mixing issues and just an issue of the amount of stuff that you would need to put in a track. Overproduction. Keep it simple, keep it easy to follow along with, and you should get to much better results than this. It's definitely a bit on the quiet side here. I got you. Is this C or C sharp or something like that? I know it's a very low bass, but I still don't think I'm a fan of the octave higher bass. Especially with these kind of aggressive sounds on top of it, it doesn't really feel like it fits. Like the occasional jumps like you have here sound good, but I think if you put the whole pattern down an octave, it's gonna sound better. This is in that lower register, right?
You must know that the paint was broken.
Nice vocal. I like how it sits in there. Overall, the rest of the track is very good sounding. It's a nice balance. It's nice sound design, nice ideas, nice in different parts of the structure. Hello Zenline. Welcome, welcome. I think just having a moment there when that kick hits exactly a bar before the drop starts, having that space, that bar not play the asset line, just so that there's a moment of realization of like, oh, now a big change is gonna happen, and then you get into it and the asset line starts again. I think that's slightly more effective. Still no camera? No. It's still too hot. I'm not risking the camera overheating. I think up until September, mid-September, maybe there's not going to be a camera. Now you can hear the difference between the two octaves. That lower octave bass definitely sounds a lot more impactful. second part of the track doesn't match the first part, to be honest. Still feels pretty simmery in that it's that one bar up, one bar down, one bar up, one bar down. Here again with this sound. I guess here it alternates. Cool stuff, I like it. Nice and glitch stuff. Overall, not much more to say about that one. It's just a good track. I like it. I'm assuming this is going to go into another drop, a final drop, and then the track is going to be like 8 minutes, maybe 9 minutes long. Because that last part really feels like a build up until the next section. Yes, yes, cool. Yeah, that sounds good then. That sounds very cool. I like that. Next up we have Emerald Deville with Extremophile Work in Progress. We've had all of these tracks up until here. Yes. We don't have any other members. Nice. So yes, Extremophile Work in Progress. I'm stuck there. I get that a lot. Just leave the track for a couple of... I usually do a couple of weeks, but sometimes even a couple of months. And then when I get back into it, I pretty quickly have an idea of what the track needs in certain spots. Very strong bass transient here. And the atmosphere sound a little bit to the wide side. Very aggressive sound here, of course, but I like it. I think the kick can have a little bit more presence throughout all of this. Bit of sidechaining on the synths on just the transient. I usually like to do like a 3 dB, maybe 5 dB gain reduction on just the transient, so like 40 milliseconds of release, and then setting it so that it only triggers from like 500 Hz and above. I feel like those shimmers should stop when the drop stops. So that the choir gets its maximum space, and then when the kick and bass comes in, then is when the synths take over again. there we had a strange, stronger sounding kicker. Some of these synths really start to take over the kick and bass. The last one is a good example of one where I feel like it could just be turned down by a couple of dB. Something with the bassline sounds off though, it switches like 6 times. I think that is the goal, right? To have this constantly altering sounding bassline vibe. If that is the case, then you're succeeding, and I think it's a cool idea. But you do need to make sure that, of course, everything is mixed well, volume-wise and that kind of stuff. But the main thing that this track needs in terms of volume mixing is more the synths and whatnot. And maybe compress those a little bit, remove some of the pure volume from some of them if you have to. But maybe some of them need like dynamics, where just a part of it is too loud and a part of it is actually loud enough. So try to enhance the depth a little bit between kick and bass just being the main elements, the drums being the second element that sit behind them, and then only below that having stuff like sequences and synths, and then even below that still you have your atmospheres and then like risers and effects and that kind of stuff, the really backing sequence stuff, the stuff that you're almost hearing subconsciously as opposed to truly hearing it. Some sound cleaner than others, I don't know, Phase it in particular. Yeah, that it's gonna happen because it's like part out of key, and maybe a bass was designed in one key and it sounds better in that key. Overall, I didn't notice one of the basses being like particularly bad sounding though. It didn't sound like some of them were breaking the flow for me. What I did hear was that there were some of them that had the last note lower, but I think that was more of a groove stylistic choice than it's like an accident. I think that he did that part on purpose. Next up, we have another Emerald DeVille track, Fredo Fliquid. F Enroll F Liquids, I guess. Work in progress. I read that in Italian first. Ferro means iron. Ferro liquid. Ferro fluid. Why did I saw that as liquid? It is fluid indeed. The capitalization on it is strange. The L is capitalized, not the F. Ooh, that's a very boxy, bass heavy kick and bass. Yeah, this definitely needs more click to both the kick and bass actually. Less of a strong sub, maybe a little bit more punch in that bass as well. Here the key changes aren't as obvious because you're mainly listening to the sub, and the sub is not really something that you really hear. So you have less of a context to hear the key change. Hello Switchblade, welcome, welcome. Nice metallic sound design there, I like that. Ooh, this bass is definitely muddy. This is a good example of, I think, the problems that Innerside is looking for. This one has a strange tonality to it in comparison to the other ones. Again, it feels like there's synths in here that are a little bit on the loud side. This format one is definitely one of them.
The genre switcher from Silence to Shoegaze will hit your heart, not gonna lie.
Likely will, yes.
If you are the next track, there's maybe something softer in between? I don't think so. I guess Xenon is a little bit softer.
That's a nice low texture, I like that one. Nice melody, I like it. Bass on this one definitely has to go better, I feel. Yeah, the click definitely needs to have more power in here. You can see that. Overall, not bad track, but the kick and bass in the first one was definitely better. Hey everyone, here I am sending a song that I used to congratulate my favorite singer, Christina Ash Marina, on her birthday. She liked my song. Okay. Is it gonna include like her vocals? Because if it does, then we cannot play it. We'll see. If there's a vocal in there, then I'll wait for confirmation from Osobi, if he's still here in the chat. There is a vocal in here, but that is him. Does sound interesting. I feel like all the processing on this track is not just the vocal, which is very extreme, but some of the other elements as well.
Russian happy birthday song. This isn't a joke, this is a real submission to my feedback stream.
It is a really interesting vibe. The vocal being slightly panned to the right. Lead being relatively quiet here. That lead should be much more powerful if it wants to compete with that vocal. Whenever you're doing these kick rolls, make sure that there's no bass in there on the bass line that is messing up the clarity of the kick drum. Overall, there's a real lack of kick and bass clarity. I think the bass line needs some strong compression on them before the sidechain. And then it also needs to have the sidechain set up in a way that it stops playing right before the click of the kick drum, as opposed to the exact moment the kick starts to play. Stop it right before that. You can do that like an LFO tool if you're using LFO tool. Instead of using this sidechain, you would use this kind of sidechain. The drinking requirement might be too high for this genre. True. Overall, very cool musical idea. Definitely a fun, uplifting song. I guess the mixing leaves a lot to be desired. But over time, if you get more into this style of music, if that is something that you want to do, then it can definitely be something that you improve over time. Definitely the stuff like the sidechaining and that kind of stuff can massively improve tracks like this. Next up, we have another Nin XZ submission. Ninx. I don't know if that's the exact way that you want to pronounce it. Nature Rewinded featuring Oak. 154 C sharp. Again, if they say such specific BPMs, there's usually a reason for that. Very strong intro here. Maybe partially because my volume was still at 3 dB.
Blood circulation, bone problem and skin problem.
Nice dark vibe, I like that. Nice start. Clean kick and bass. Much to love already about this track. Some of these elements sound strong. This guy too, a little bit on the loud side. Same here. Usually when you see this waveform massively alter color, then it's a little bit too strong. You usually want to kind of keep the shade of the kick and bass in there. Here where it becomes really green, so all of a sudden. Those are moments where it's just too loud. That was a good example of where it was even higher. But this is small stuff, right? This is like 2 dB on some synths. Maybe it's just a bit of extra compression on the main synths group that can keep it all in check all at once. You're welcome, Fossilby. Hope that you can improve your music through my feedback. Here, definitely try playing with the stereo field of some of these continuous sequences. Maybe having them alternate their stereo width on every note, or alternating on every beat for an interesting groove, or maybe doing a cool call and response kind of thing with the stereo field. But just having everything fairly mono, fairly close to it, Sounds much less interesting than the stuff that you're doing over here, where it's all alternating and every patch is doing something different. And therefore you get this more complex tutorial field through the combination of all of the patches. We're getting in some nice rhythmic ideas of 1-bar loops in the percussions. I think this is again one of those spots where having an idea that is also repetitive, maybe over 1 bar, maybe over 2 bars, is an interesting choice for this small part of the track. Even in the darker types of psytrance, you still often hear that there's at least like parts where there's some kind of rhythm in there, where there's some kind of main idea in there. Like the part which I sent in the Discord, the music I liked channel a couple of days ago, where we have this really cool, like almost horror movie choir breakdown, and that then goes into a rhythmic section for a while with a chopped up version of that chord.
Very, very cool stuff, man.
Very, very cool track.
I like that a lot. Not many notes
on there. I guess maybe a final note, which I caught towards the end there, is a little bit, a very, very small bit of sidechaining, bumping effect on your closed hats could be nice. Because right now it feels like there's nothing on there, which sometimes feels like it works. But I feel like that's for like shorter periods, right? If it goes no sidechaining throughout the whole track, feels like it gets really static and really boring, and it doesn't really become part of the track itself. Maybe if you have like a fill or something like that where you have the hat still play and doing some kind of rhythm thing there, you would turn the sidechaining off. Or maybe if you have like I don't know, like a 32 beat roll on the kick drum that you really want to come through, you just turn off the sidechaining for that one beat that it plays and then you turn it back on. Those small moments where it just stands out for a second and then goes back into being a little bit more in line with, I guess, the pumping effect that the kick naturally brings. So that would be the last thing, but I would only do that on the closed hats because they're such a groove fast element, right? Offbeat hat is already doing that by nature of just being on the offbeat. The other elements are already kind of flowing in their own way. And now the hat feels like it just needs to be glued a little bit more to the kick and bass flow and the main groove of the track. So overall, that's very, very cool. We have 3 more tracks right now. I think I'm going to do a break, and as long as there's going to be submissions, I'm going to continue after that break, but I want to do at least these 3 tracks before the break still. So right now we're going to listen to Eternity Now by Alien Immigrant. Some Xenon stuff. Very cool cover art. Doesn't really look Xenon in any way, the cover art. Usually that does tend to be a bit more of a darker feel genre, so that usually gets reflected in the artwork. Really strong usage of the second harmonic here.
Time is our adventure, our experience.
A little bit of an issue where it doesn't feel like it flows nice into the start. What you can do is all of the kicks before that very first kick of the drop happens, lower that by 5 dB. Of course, kick and bass cleaning is very, very important, and that is not being respected here, so you get transient differences like this. For Xenon, this feels a little bit too melodic, a little bit too relying on a single element there with this melody, and also a little bit too high of an octave.
It is the experience of eternity. The experience of the eternal.
Really hard groove to follow here.
Is here right now.
That was really hard to follow.
Beyond time.
When it comes to rolls and stuff like that, you definitely need to work on the leader with resampling and making sure that you're not just introducing massive phase shifts with like high passes and that kind of stuff. Seems to rely a lot on sequencing. That's not really the Xenon way, usually. Sequences and melodies are pretty rare. It's more about almost like grid synths, but constantly morphing. Like even this snare rhythm feels strange. It's just one hit, one hit, one hit, two hits, and then one hit, two hit, two hit, one hit, two hit, two hit, two hit, one hit, two hit, two hits.
If you don't experience it now,
right,
you're never going to get it.
I like this part. This could be a cool idea. I like that. That's a nice transition from the half time to the full time. Still needs to make sure that it's clean. Yeah, this feels just like a random melody placed on top. Not really interacting with the bass groove whatsoever. That is usually what is very important in Xenon, is that interaction between the bass groove and all of the mid-range elements. Ooh, that was very muddy in an overrated piece. Like there was a second kick or something like that. These small elements that you're making here sound really cool as more of a backing atmosphere. Makes them in even quieter, remove some of the other sequences, and then just focus on that classic grid synth kind of arrangement with like percussions and sounds that add to the groove, as opposed to continuous sequences. Some cool ideas. Definitely a little bit off from what I usually know as Xenon. But definitely some cool ideas in there as well. It needs a lot of adaptation to fit the genre more, I think. I think the original vibe of the genre that the genre is going for would make it better if you stick closer to that than trying to go into like melodic stuff and continuous stuff and that kind of thing. Maybe one of the things that I should say as feedback is just listen to more of the genre that you're trying to make. Anyway, next up we have Inequality, last track demo 9. This is gonna be the shoegaze stuff, right? And sounds a little bit off, but other than that, I would expect the kick in here to have a little bit more crunch, and whatever right is happening in like the left ear is a little bit too much. This is a cool part, I like this. Nice clarity for the guitar, nice panning synth around it. Even that guitar, I would probably have it more mono and then add slight widening as opposed to have it pan to the left. Here it's missing a little bit of that clarity, it gets a little bit strong in the just over 1000 hertz area, like this area here. By crunch, you mean light distortion and saturation? I don't remember in which context I said it, but usually that is what it means, yes. Too much reverbs on the percussions, I might be wrong. Yeah, I think that is the washness that I was hearing. Here the sidechaining is really strong. Especially for a type of music that seems to be going for a more played instruments vibe, at least. Maybe on the kick I said punch instead of crunch. That could be the only... Maybe you heard me saying punch strangely. Because the main thing that I think I hear in this track that is really standing out is how the kick drum has no punch and no sub whatsoever. So I would go for a more... Since the snare is like a dubstep snare kind of deal, I would go for a dubstep kick and just add like a disperser to it and then sample that into something that you can use. So, like Terror drums, you get one of these kicks that has a little bit of low frequency stuff in here, right? And you just disperser it. So you get the punch out of it that you want and the sub strength out of it that you want. That is usually the approach that I would go with. Stuff like this. If you're going for the dubstep snare, then I would go for the dubstep kick and just really hit with that. Because it sounds off if the snare sounds more aggressive than the kick drum. The other way around is better, by the way. You sometimes hear that dubstep kind of aggressive kick drum and then like a really high snare that is almost like a distorted tone kind of deal. Likely I do have some of those in here. No, these are the normal ones. Yeah, this stuff. That kind of deal. Or the stuff that comes from the Grime pack. This is also good. Snares. Yeah, some of this stuff. If you have a heavy dubstep snare with one of those in between, that can still sound better than having a very aggressive snare with a less aggressive kick to match that between, so to say. Cymatics is a really good source for dubstep samples. I definitely agree, although the library that I have from them stems from back in the day when I was making dubstep like 7 years ago. So the sounds have definitely morphed since then from them, or the sounds that you need actually. But with a little bit of processing, just the disperser that I used, that already got it way closer. Okay, how many more tracks do we have? We have 4 more tracks. I think it's a good time for me to do a quick break and then we'll get into those tracks and maybe another hour-ish of feedback stream. And then we will be working on this track over here. So I'm going to be putting it on, have you guys listen to it, and you guys can give me some feedback in exchange for the feedback that I give you guys. And then from there in the production, I'm going to see if I can actually implement that. glad you guys all like what I've going on in here. I do realize now that it was maybe a little bit quiet, but that's okay. Try my best to volume balance everything for the 4 other tracks that we have coming up now. That low rumble definitely needs to be shortened at the end there. That's one thing that we're gonna have to do. I hate female vocals on tracks, but this one is top notch, man. Thank you. You mean like spoken vocals or the sung vocals? Which one do you mean? Either way, we'll quickly continue because we do have another member here. Takarsis. I'm sorry that I didn't play this before when it was submitted, because it was submitted a little bit of time ago already. And I should have, of course, played it then, because you remember. But this is Primeval. Is that a real word? Primeval. No. Just, okay, yeah. Yeah, I get what you mean. That is, yes, it's a real word. A real word. I want to... Prehistoric. How is my pronunciation? Is my pronunciation real as well, or is that a fake pronunciation? Either way, Takarsis. I won't dwell on it for too long for the track name. The more important part is the actual sounding of the track. Primeval. Aha. So I was saying it correctly. Nice. You're the hard tech free party style, right? That's you? Yeah. Nice vibe setup, nice groove already being set up here, I like it. I do hope when we get into the actual drop that the kick is a little bit lower in frequency. A seems a little bit high. I would probably go for like a F sharp or something like that. I think my stereo analyzer is misbehaving a bit. That seems to make more sense. I feel like there's a bass line missing at this point. Mixing kick and bass can be a lot better mixed. Do you hear a bass? I don't hear a bass. I just hear the kick having the toon 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 toon. And then there's that like distorted mid-range. There we are. That should be from the point on after the intro. It should be doing this. This is much more powerful. The first break, maybe even in the first drop slash intro thing, it should already go to this bassline. Maybe for the second half of that already, but definitely after that break, that is the moment where the DJ is gonna have your track fully mixed in, And then from that moment on, you should be providing all the bass that the production needs. Just like this Xenon guy that we had before, it's relying a little bit on just like random sounding melodies. Even if this one is repeating, it doesn't repeat fast enough, or like a real repetition to build up in our head. So maybe just like a 1-bar asset line or something like that, something that is a little bit more groovy.
Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years.
See, this beat is, I think, offbeat. Yes, now the beat that is playing is offbeat, but at the start it wasn't there.
Your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter.
Listen to how much more impactful this drop is just because of the bass line being present to work against the kick drum. Now the kick drum also doesn't sound too high anymore. I feel like the melody here isn't the best play. I like the vocals a lot more. Give it a bit more industrial techno kind of vibe, which I think you should be going for. To keep the big impact for the last one, that's why maybe it was wrong. I don't think that's a good idea indeed. Yeah. I think it's better to stick with at least having the bass line in the parts where the DJ would actually be mixing your track in fully.
I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you.
These vocals should probably be on parts where there's less other stuff going on in terms of synths and mid-range stuff.
My flowing streams, my forests.
Hard to understand what they're saying now in the vocals.
One way or the other, your actions will determine your fate. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Cool stuff. I like that. I like that a lot. Okay, since we are on it, and if you wouldn't mind, here's another thing that I did in the last few months, only 5 minutes long, missing the second half yet. Also dark, but a lot different still. Ninx, People Can Fly 152 in D. Reminds me of the Outsiders remix. It's a really good track, I like that one a lot. I'll turn it up when there we are. Honestly, it doesn't need much turning up. That makes the intro atmosphere is a little bit quiet, I would say. It does give a nice depth to it. But I feel like making specifically that atmosphere that you have playing a little bit louder up until it's still playing here, that like almost zappy atmosphere that is panning left and right. Having that guy not just produce constant high frequencies, but have a bandpass go up and down, maybe randomly modulated, maybe hand-drawn modulation, something like that, and then turning it up a little bit more is a better way to introduce depth than keeping the full frequency spectrum and just keeping it that low in volume. Nice use of percussions here, I like that a lot. A little bit on the loud side with this element here. I don't think this vibe and the percussions can stay the whole time if you have a big turnaround coming up until maybe here, where we had that little fill. Maybe extend that fill a little bit and turn it into a real turnaround. Just different synths, getting rid of the drums, diving maybe into some more crispy FM synths and stuff like that. Just so that there's a bit more of a change throughout. That would be nice. Until this point, I believe that that swoop that you have every 2 bars, this one, wow, that guy and the drum percussions, they are played out a bit too much. Cool stuff though, I like it. Nice sound design up until this point, nice warm atmospheric stuff. Almost sounds like it's like a Japanese melody. It's almost sampled and manipulated in interesting ways. Like granular synthesis with reverb on it. This part is different. I like this. Here maybe feel free to do more with snares and that kind of stuff, as opposed to the percussions that you were using before. Just so that you have a difference towards that second part as well again. It can be cool to have segments where it's just a specific percussion that is just playing on that segment and that is taking up an area of the mix. That's usually still not enough though, and I usually also change up the main leads with them and the main ideas with them as well. So overall, cool ideas. I do think that the first drop relied a little bit too much on the percussions and that one washing synth towards the end. I think switching it up there halfway through and then maybe going into some FM one shots or maybe some more. How do you describe? I always call it mushroom sounds. It is the type of sound design that is based on real strong resonance. But you guys probably all know the trick that I'm about to do, where you just go like this, and then you also add a phaser. The new phaser, I haven't studied how it should be applied here, but it should be very similar in that you just modulate the frequency here, set both of them a little bit lower, and then this. I call this like mushroom sound design. Right, this plus removing low frequencies that don't need to be there, and then echo on there. This has the mushroom texture, and I don't even know how to describe it. There used to be these videos on YouTube that described how to make oscillator music, when it's oscilloscope music. And I believe that texture was very similar to the texture that we hear in here, and that there was one frequency that was really strongly pronounced whenever in that music genre they showed actual mushrooms. I'm not gonna play it, but I can find it online for you guys. Oscilloscope music. This, and then yeah, the mushroom stuff, this stuff over here. There's probably more mushroom related ones in there, because I know there are. Yeah, here, how to draw a mushroom with sound. This is also a good example of the kind of texture that I mean with this kind of sound design. Maybe going into something like that can be cool as a second motif, just something to counter the main thing that you were doing at the very start of the track, where you're building it up over a long period of time, which is still cool, still leave that. But then make a second part to your first drop, and then also a variation in the second drop. And then it should be all good. So next up we have Just Zale, also known as Zale with Forever, featuring Fable. Okay.
Enemy plane coming in at 2 o'clock.
He's in my sight. Rockets ready. Fire 1, 2, 3, 4.
Some very glitchy ideas here, very dissonant sounding ideas. I like it almost as a startup for this idea here, I guess. Cool stuff. Vocals should be a bit more stereo widened. There should be a stereo widened version of it, and it should probably just be a bit louder in the first place. Especially if it's just going to be playing in this like break segment, to say it like that. Like, I don't consider this part of the vocal, right? Even though it's made out of the same texture element. Very strong beat there, the first one, and that distorted stuff as well. There are some moments in this track where there's some really clear clarity, And the sound design that you're doing is good throughout the whole track. The ideas that you're doing are good throughout the whole track, but there are moments where the mixing leaves a little bit to be desired. Hello, I have a new work in progress for the stream. Cool. Cool. Feel free to send it in. I don't know how long it has been since you last joined the stream, but if it has been too long, then you probably need to check out the Feedback Rules channel first. Discord, yes. Definitely Discord. Moments like this where suddenly the guitar becomes a lot louder, that is usually not something that you want in a good mix, right? That imbalance between the same instrument in one spot being quiet and in the other spot being louder. And that comes in one area, the limiter is acting on the sub bass. That is a really strong and big waveform with a lot of volume. And then in the second part, that sub bass is no longer there, so the rest of the elements have more space and they fill in the space that the sub bass is now leaving vacant. Second submission, if it's allowed, just polishing this one. Need to make the end of the track still rough ending. This is another submission by Ines site, and this is called Doubt Protocol. Cool. Takes a little while to load here on Google Drive, but it should load any second now.
Hey, we're live now. You're live. Ooh, me too. Sure, we all feel alive now, but how do we know it's not all, you know, just an illusion? I mean, I can reach out and touch you, but it's all just signals to the brain, easily recreatable with the right technology. You know what I mean? Yeah, but no. Listen. Watch this. Through the simple act of creation, have I become a reflection of my own creator?
A little bit of a gritty kick and bass here. That is when a kick and bass has a strong click sound also on the second oscillation and the third oscillation potentially. You can see it happening here where we have one click here and then we have another click happening here. This means the filter should probably close a little bit faster. Just Zale back. I'm sorry you're just back, but we just reviewed your track, unfortunately. If you go into the YouTube version of the live stream, you can still catch the replay. Otherwise, if you're a subscriber, a Patreon, or a YouTube member, after the stream ends, you'll also be able to see it in the Discord. Nice sound design, I like it. I like the use of grid synths in here. Keeping that stability is cool.
Just an illusion. I mean, I can reach out and touch you, but it's all just signals to the brain, easily recreatable.
Nice vocal mix here. The switch from the lower bass to the higher bass is a nice one. I like that. Still not know if I'm a fan of this staccato feeding kick and bass. I usually like everything a bit more glued together. enjoying the staccato kick and bass. I mean, it depends on what you like and what... I guess it's because I'm normally writing much more of a glued together kick and bass myself that it feels a little bit off to me, so to say, maybe. I know it's not like technically wrong. I like this sound. That one FM sound that had the delay going around it. Bit of a strange key change, I would say, here. Sounded like the track was almost ending here. Honestly, going into that break, I think it took a little bit too long to get into there.
You gotta focus on what's real, man. How do we know it's not all, just an illusion? I mean, I can reach out and touch you, but it's all just signals to the brain, easily recreatable with the right technology.
I know it's been a long time since we talked. Sorry about that. But well, maybe if you don't want to talk, you could just listen.
A bit of a loud sub bass there, probably take care of. Oftentimes this rumble isn't actually there and all of this stuff that you see isn't actually there, but when there's like a sign of actually going down, it usually means that in that lower frequency there's actual stuff happening, right? Because this is just like the analyzer not knowing what the hell is happening. I think the problem that you have with the track and why you feel like it still needs a bit more polishing is I think it plays the same groove a little bit too much. It's a cool idea that you have developed here with that chord step and that kind of thing, and the other grid synth that plays after it, the more of a darker pluck thing. But building a whole track just on that idea and having some other elements around that, it feels like it's a little bit too much for that idea to handle on its own, and maybe having a second idea in the second drop or the second part is a better way of keeping the track more interesting. We have 2 more tracks right now in the feedback segment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to close the queue for that amount of time. That way we just do over 2 hours of feedback, which is nice. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 tracks that I've given feedback on in total, which is a good amount. So now let's get into the last two, with the first one being Tornado Ghost Loop Titan Protocol VA. Interesting title here. Very strong start as well. I should probably turn the volume down. Very crazy sound design here. Feel like that's a bit of a techno kick, maybe. Here you definitely have the kick bleeding into it. You can see the first transient be different from all of the other transients, and that is something you definitely want to avoid. Also with these guys here, you can see the second transient just being completely mashed up and its punch being destroyed by the tail of the first kick. This is supposed to be the kick and bass part. This feels like they're just like small kick drums, like high-pitched kick drums, which is not how a bass line is made. Any feedback on this master? I felt like that something is off. There's definitely something off, and that is that your bass line is, it looks like just kick drums played at a higher pitch. It should be saw wave bass. Really hard to concentrate on anything else other than the bassline just not being a bassline. Up until this point, the sound design does feel a little bit stable and never really changing. Like, it's constantly technically a different sound, but it's just a different sound in the same way every time, right? It's this zoop down thing, repeats every 4 bars or 8 bars or whatever it is. I feel like there's some strong sidechain happening also on some of the mid-range sequences. Usually you don't really do a lot of sidechaining inside that. Suddenly the bassline is removed altogether. If that even was the bassline, it almost feels like you muted the bassline and forgot to turn it on again. Really hard to judge this, to be honest. The amount of synths that are here and the atmospheres that are here, again, haven't really changed since the first part of the drop. So it starts to become, honestly at this point, just a really boring arrangement as well. There's not really anything that is hinting at any form of groove or anything like that. Honestly, it sounds very much like a beginner track, like it's one of the first tracks that you do in this genre and you have a lot to learn. Listen to a lot of other people's music. Maybe try to analyze it every once in a while on a waveform analyzer or spectral analyzer or any of the analyzers that you see over here. Mainly the waveform is the most important one, I would say. There's the most information in there. But the biggest thing that you can do for yourself is just a lot more listening. Every hour or every day an hour is what I used to do for 2.5 years. That is what I usually recommend for most beginners as well. I know that it's not the thing that you want to hear as a beginner, like, oh, it takes 2.5 years and I have to spend a lot of that time just sitting there and listening to music from other people. But it's the best way to actually improve at this stuff and actually become better as a musician. Cool. Final track. Volksta with the Platonist Draft. Very cool cover art here. I like that a lot. Seems like a mosaic made out of like really small stones in certain areas there. Really nice start here. I like the intro up until this point. Should I be turning this down? It is at as high as it can be. Then the vocals are maybe a little bit on the harsh side. Yeah, they're definitely overpowering over here. When the kick and bass starts to play, it should be the main strong element. If you want to do this kind of kick and bass, I highly recommend extending this kick to be 2 beats long. Especially if you're gonna have like groove elements in there like that. Then having the offbeat be done in terms of sub bass by the bass and the on-beat being done by the kick is probably the best idea. Right now it feels a little bit like a hollow kick. Transition here like that. Nice groove being set up as well. Honestly, towards the end here, you can probably follow with the bass line and the key change. That makes the end a little bit more impactful going into a breakdown like this. But overall, some crazy ideas playing out in this track. I really like it. little bit of trouble there in terms of cleanliness on that first part. Is this a wavetable bassline? Is this a wavetable bassline or is Serum bassline based on the tutorial that I made for Serum 2? Where you use just the diffuser built into Serum for your bass shift. Rendered vital bass. Okay. Because it sounds a little bit strange when pitched up. It sounds like it has some of the artifacts that I struggle with actually with the track that we're going to be working on later. Actually, highest note is not right. Ah, okay, yeah, that makes it. Here we're getting into a place where the mid-range is very, very muddy. Oh yeah, we can see that in the waveform as well, just taken over by the mid-range colors here. Let's see it being loud here as well. I think there you're trying to do a little bit too much and you're just stacking up volumes between different elements. I don't know if you know what I mean, but usually when I have like a really busy part, it also becomes the loudest part of the track because I just stack up element after element, which just contribute to the track itself being louder overall. And that was definitely a problem there towards the end. Honestly, keep the choir for this part here, for the breakdown. Then it becomes much more powerful. Ooh, that's a rough transition going into the kick and bass here, because the kick and bass sound quieter than the breakdown. It's definitely not what you want. A little bit loud on the melody here. Nice groove setup there with that sliding groove. A little bit of an issue here. Don't like this transition. Again, a little bit overfilled, especially the choir. The choir is making this part very, very loud. That choir can be turned down by like 10 dB here. Little bit of a long reverb tail towards the end there. Usually what I like to do at the end, if this was a final track or a final mix, is I go through all of the elements, and that is one of the places where I go look for if I need to add any fades. And specifically if one element stays on much longer and towards the end it is still playing, like we saw here where there was like volume and suddenly it just stops playing, it drops all off, the graph as soon as the end of the actual track happens. That is the stuff that I go hunt for and just fade out, so that it nicely fades out with the rest of the elements that are fading out at that point. So that would be the final thing there, but overall very, very nice track. And that means that for now, we are at the end of the feedback segment of this stream. And that means that I'm going to go into another project, and I'm just going to produce for a little bit. Specifically, we're going to be working on this project over here, the one that we heard before. I think it's a little bit different than what we have here as a render. I've definitely worked on it a little bit more, but it should be fairly close. I am going to, I guess, have it play one more time, and then we'll get into the production of things. So I can turn up my microphone and load up the project, and then I'll just do some chill production. Thank you guys for stopping by. Thank you guys for submitting to the feedback. Hopefully next week I'll see you guys all in the house production challenge. And then we have, of course, 2 things that we'll do before this segment of the stream, I guess. Anything else that I need to say before I go into chat only mode? I don't think so. Thank you guys for hanging out, and thank you guys for sticking around up until this part of the stream already.
One aims for perfection in one's life. One doesn't find it very often. For me, this is about as close as it gets.
Otis.